Who's Who in the Martial Arts channel. Tonight, we are blessed and fortunate to have Master Trey Crake of the Shou Pai system, who has a school called the Academy of Kung Fu in Ridgeland, Mississippi, right outside Jackson. He's been at this for decades. He's probably forgotten more than I know. So, with that being said, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you from myself and the International Chinese Boxing Association to you, Master Trey. As a board member, I thought it would be phenomenal with all the contributions you've already contributed since you joined the board. You should be our first tee off with the who's who, right? So
Sure.
Thank you for all your efforts, and thank you for giving us your time this evening when I know you got a school to run.
I do. Well, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be a part of the association and participate in the interview with you tonight. Just giving some background on the different instructors in the organization and what our history is, where we came from, how we think, and how we live. So glad to be
Okay.
here.
Yeah, great. So let's see. I'm gonna make a little adjustment on my sound so I can hear things because I'm old. But so to get started, how many years have you been involved? Give us like a 5 minute or whatever you want to give us introduction to you and to how long you've been in the martial arts and teaching and all
Sure.
that good stuff.
So I grew up in Houston, Texas, or a suburb of Houston, Texas, and just a normal middle class life. Back in the day before cell phones and internet, we spent all of our time outdoors. So I was always out with my buddies, building forts and tree houses in the woods and exploring and riding bikes all over the place and just kind of staying outside all the time. When I was about 10 years old, my father enrolled me at the Houston Judo Club in Houston. So that was my first exposure to martial arts. I, of course, knew what martial arts were, but didn't know all the different styles and uh, countries of origin and all the things that we're familiar with now. My father, when he was in high school, was a Golden Gloves boxing person, and I think he back in those days martial arts weren't really a thing, but I think he was always fascinated with martial arts, and so somehow he must have seen an advertisement or heard something and he enrolled me in classes. So I wasn't out actually, you know, that interested in martial arts or knew that much about it, but I was always athletic and picked up quick on, any type of sports or anything like that. But I didn't really know, what judo was all about. But I really liked judo and I really kind of hooked me in martial arts because, uh, I was always a little scrawny kid, and judo taught me how to not only take down a larger opponent, but how to control them on the ground and through different submissions and arm bars and chokes and things like that. So I really liked it. Matter of fact, when I was taking judo, again, a little kid, there was a boy in the class who was kind of a stocky kid. He was a little bit bigger than I was, and he would always kind of push his weight around in class. Of course, we were little kids, but pushing people, bumping into people, talking trash, stuff like that. And I just tolerated it, trained hard, and continued to work on my skills. And we had an inter-school tournament, and I got matched up with this kid. So I don't even remember the match, but I do remember that I won the match because I still have a picture. Back in those days, they had a sign. Basically, it was like a poster board, and it said the winner, and they would take a Polaroid picture of you in front of that sign that showed that you had won your matches at the tournament.
Oh, that's cool.
So I did judo for about 2 years, and again, really liked it, and really liked the break falls too. We did a lot of break falls. Didn't do a lot of punching and kicking, but did a lot of throws, sweeps, takedowns, and then ground controls. So as a kid, I have no idea why I stopped taking judo, but one day we just didn't go anymore. I didn't really give it another thought at the time. I mean, maybe at that time I did, but looking back, I don't know what the reasoning was. So after that, about a year or so passed, and next thing I know, my father had enrolled himself, my older brother, and myself in a community center. It was a karate program. So don't even know what style karate it was. Again, I was probably about 12 or 13 years old at that time and enjoyed the class, was learning a lot. It was a small community center, yeah, it was a community center class. And so they had this kind of a cocky assistant instructor there, and he was demonstrating a technique, and he grabbed my father out of the class to help him on this technique. Well, he kicked my father and cracked his ribs. And so my
Man.
father kind of just got discouraged and like, I don't want to go back there. You know, this kid is just out of control. So after about a year of karate, I was done with karate. So living in Houston, Texas, my father worked for Shell Oil Company,
Mhm.
and he got transferred to Shell Oil Company in New Orleans, downtown New Orleans. We did not care, or my parents didn't care to live in the city of New Orleans, so we moved to Slidell, Louisiana, which is right across Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans, and just was a basically late junior high, early high school. Didn't do anything sports wise or martial arts wise for a couple of years, and then one day we got this one of those door hanger coupon card envelopes hanging on our front door, and I was looking through it, and there was a coupon card for a free month of kung fu classes. So at the time, I knew kung fu was martial arts. As a matter of fact, the card said Chinese karate is how it was termed on the
Yeah.
card, because a lot of people back then didn't know what kung fu was,
Yeah.
but
Late 70s,
no
early
karate was.
80s. That's what they've advertised
Right.
as.
That's right. That's right. So this must have been late 70s, late
Okay.
70s. And so I took up the month. And during and after the free month, I continued classes. I wasn't doing anything else, and I enjoyed the classes. It's a very small class, and one of my instructors, senior students, taught kids class. So I didn't even really know or get to know my instructor until I had been in classes for maybe 6 months,
Oh,
and was happened to be at a community event during this time, happened to be at a community event, and my instructor was putting on a martial arts demonstration. I was like, wow, he's here. So, I was in the crowd and I was watching, and he would have his students attack him, and, different punches and grabs and stuff like that. And he was so smooth and so fast that I was just blown away. I was like, I've never seen anything like this, because everything I had always seen, everything was really hard movements and real linear. He was super fast hands, could move like somebody much younger, much lighter. He was always a big guy, real stocky,
yeah.
big guy. It's funny because he would do techniques when he'd say, "Put me in a bear hug," and I'd grab him around, and I couldn't even reach my hands around his
Yeah.
back because he was so, so wide shouldered and such a thick guy. But he always used after that anyway. After that demonstration, I was like, I just happened into this because I really didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know who my instructor was. I know he was an instructor, but I didn't really know who he was and what his background was and what his experience was.
Hmm.
So I trained in classes. We moved around from place to place. My instructor would always just find a location that would give him cheap rent. So sometimes we would be in an empty strip shopping center. Sometimes for a while we were in a health club where they had like an aerobics room. We were there for years. Then he had another building which was exclusively his that we were in for several years. And then
And
so
if you don't mind, and for those that don't know, because we're both from, well, we both lived in Slidell. That's how, kind of how we got connected. Your instructor was who?
sure, my instructor is Grandmaster Norman Pedlahor, and he was fourth generation Shou Pai. Shou Pai's Dragon Claw style. So, I mean, I can get into that if we want to go ahead and,
Oh
or
no,
you
we'll
want to
get
talk
into it
on some other
because
topics, or
yeah, we'll get into it because I
okay,
love the history and the lineages and how everything interacts and how it morphs and becomes something different and new and exciting.
sure. Well, that was one of the things that was important to my instructor because he knew or ran into so many people that really didn't know the history of their style. They
Yeah,
were basically, well, I took karate from Joe with the Y, and that's all they knew.
Yeah.
So, we've got pages and pages of history and all of the lineage and when they were born, when they died, what they contributed, things like that. And we actually had to take, even as a beginner student, we had to take a history test as part of our rank test. And it was like 8 pages of questions, and it part of it was the history of origins of kung fu, but then in our style we had to know each master who was an heir, when they were born and when they died, not the dates, not the days, but the years.
Hmm.
And so there was like 6 of them, and we had to memorize all that. And I remember my first time I took that test, I failed the test, so I didn't pass my test. And then he corrected my test and got it back to me. And then after that, I had, you know, we have our history, but I had all the right answers, and I studied. I knew that was, not just a thing. It was,
Yeah, it
passing
was
tests was
important.
predicated on,
Yeah.
on
So,
knowing.
so let me ask you about those early days of training. How big were your classes? What was the training like back then? Uh, was it a close, like family class knit thing?
Sure, sure. Um, so back in the day, as you know, we did old school training. I mean, it was, I'm not going to say primitive, but it was traditional. Um, the classes were not split up by age groups at that time. Kids and adults were in the same class. It was about 80 or 90% men, young men in the class. We might have a couple of kids and a couple of ladies in the class, but it was almost all maybe high school to early 30s adult men in the classes. And like I said, we were meeting in places that weren't set up as a school. He would bring in his equipment and it would be set up, but it wasn't like we have nowadays where we have a gym type facility where, we have everything we want under roof and have all that to train with. But the classes were small. We might have had a dozen, 15 people in a class, and the whole school was probably 30 or 40 students, and it varied. Sometimes it might have been down as low as 15. One time we were training my instructor had built a big room on the back of his house. So we actually trained at his house in the back. And so the classes were small. We trained hard. A lot of the places we trained were uncomfortable. Sometimes didn't have air conditioning and things like that, but we didn't care. We were hardcore. We were in there to train and just loved the training. So we did it.
Okay. Do you still keep in touch with any of your old classmates from back in those days? Because I know some of y'all progressed through black and on. Some did not.
Yeah, everybody is kind of just spread out all over the place now. I mean, there's people in Tennessee, Florida, the Carolinas. I don't know anybody that's still in the Slidell area. Everybody else, I think maybe Walter may still be in the
Yeah,
Picayune area.
Walter's still in Picayune. He practices on his own, but he doesn't teach or anything of that nature.
Yeah. Well, as
And
far as I
Kevin
know,
Jordan, you know
yeah,
Kevin Jordan, he's
I do.
down in Florida right now. He's not
Right.
teaching. I'm trying to get him motivated, but him and his wife started a church, and they've been very busy in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I knew he was in Florida. I knew he went on to do some other martial arts things after he left us. So I think he was involved in kickboxing, and he won some titles and he did some other things.
yeah, he did a lot of
Yeah,
that
he
with
did some.
I know with Larry Hike at the time,
Yes.
and then he
Yep.
went, and then Norman and him. Long story short, the area we came up in is a small area. People know people, but Jamie Petalahor and Kevin were an item at one time,
They
and
were an item.
at one time, I thought it was her name was Jamie. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
he ended up going training with Norman to continue on. So
Well, during I finished high school, and when I finished high school, I was a brown sash or brown belt, and my family was from Texas. My older brother had gone to Texas A&M, so I always thought when I got out of high school, I was going to college in Texas.
mhm.
So when I was in Slidell in high school, I had actually was dating my future wife, and I went off to Texas. She was still in Louisiana, so I was at Texas A&M for about 3 years, and while I was there, I was started teaching in the dorm. I wanted to continue my training, and in order for me to feel committed, I wanted to make sure that I was on a schedule and not just, training in my spare time or now and then. I
Hmm.
wanted just to keep that training regimen up. So I started teaching a class in the dorm, um, in one of the, I don't know what you call it. It wasn't a cubicle, but it was like a den area that they had, a lounge, I guess is what it
Like
was.
a
They would
common
push back
area.
all the furniture. Yeah, tables and sofas and stuff where everybody would come in and study and things like that. So we would push back all the furniture and we'd get in there and train. And I had about 6 or 8 students who would train for a couple of years. Didn't award any black belts at that time. Actually, it wasn't until another year that I received my black belt. But I taught in the dorm for about 3 years, and we even had an open sparring class where we'd have other martial artists from the dorm. They would all come up on a certain night, and we'd all put on our gear and spar, and we had a great time. I mean, it was all in good fun, and got to train with some other disciplines, and so that was a lot of fun. So I decided I didn't want to be away from my fiance any longer, so I moved back to Louisiana and switched schools and went to LSU. So shortly after I made that move, I did rent a building. Actually, I started at a dance studio, renting some extra space there, and then I rented my own building and had maybe at the peak, maybe 30 students. I was just teaching part time while I was in school. And oh, what happened after that? So while I was away in Baton Rouge, I was still going home on the weekends, holidays, summertime, still training under my instructor and still learning and growing. And when I graduated from LSU, I got hired by a company who had an opening in Jackson, Mississippi. So I went to work in Jackson, which is not very much farther than I was in Baton Rouge from Slidell. So I was still close to home, still able to go down on weekends and train. And my in-laws are in Slidell, so that made it nice. I just go down there and stay with them, and then go in and spend the days with my instructor training. And that was in Baton Rouge. So after I got out of school, I got a job in Jackson. I moved over here. Been here ever since. Been about close to 40 years now in the Jackson area. So it started a small school, and it's grown. I think now, if I'm not mistaken, we are now the oldest martial arts school in the state. There was
In the
another
state.
in the state of Mississippi. Yeah, I mean,
Congratulations.
you
That's
may,
huge, especially for Kung
yeah,
Fu.
yeah, yeah. And there's only a couple of kung fu schools in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So, and there's not really any in the Jackson area. There's a Wing Chun guy here, and they call it Shadow Hand Wing
Yeah, I've
Chun,
met him.
and,
Yeah.
and the guy's name is Doc somebody
Well, his
who's
dad's
older.
Doc Savage. His
Yes.
son's Dar Savage.
Okay. I don't
And
know
him and
Dar. I know
him and I
Doc.
have met before when I was living
Okay.
up
I
there working
figured.
in Nissan.
Yeah. So one of his students is here, Jerry, and I can't off the top of my head can't remember his name. Arnold, Jerry Arnold. So he teaches a small class at his house here, and then there's a school that I know of down or has been down in the Biloxi, Ocean Springs area. Tony LaPoma
Yeah,
uh, has got a or did have a martial arts and kung fu school down there. I hadn't been in touch with Tony in years,
he
but
did
we're just kind of
Northern
isolated up
Shaolin,
here
right?
and doing our own thing. Um, we
Okay.
we compete in open tournaments. We're usually the only kung fu people at the tournaments, but they know us and respect us and treat us right. So back in the day, we there was a lot of discrimination against kung fu at the karate tournaments.
Yep.
I think a lot of them they didn't really understand our forms being circular and smooth, and we didn't do all the yelling and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
we had to prove ourselves in the ring. We didn't do it on the forms in the forms competition. So we
Um,
had to go out there and prove ourselves in the sparring, which we did. So that was a lot of fun.
yeah, I'm
And
sure
we
that took
still
some
competed.
time too.
Pardon me?
I'm sure that took some time, like over the years, before them to acclimate and
Sure,
understand.
sure. And the guys up here are really nice and open and accommodating. So, I've got no issues with the greeting and the um, the interest people have in what we do. They understand. Just a
Yeah.
different type
So
of
let
system.
me so let's shift a little bit. So understood the old days of sweat, blood, and concrete because you and I both came few years apart, but in the '80s when I was training, the only pads you really wore were don't hit the face and don't break your hands, basically. I mean, we'd compare contusions afterwards, lifting our shirts up and stuff.
Yeah.
So
So
having
I remember.
come, yeah.
Okay, I
So
was just going to
so
say, in the tournaments, groin kicks were a prime target and sweeps were a prime target. And
and there
now,
were
a lot of
points.
that stuff has been outlawed.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when groin shots were points, and it was fun. Uh, especially when you were like if you're competing against Taekwondo or somebody.
Yeah.
um,
So go ahead.
go.
I was just going to say, in tournaments up here, once the rules changed, I'd be competing against one of these Taekwondo guys who would have his knee up in the air and just flapping those kicks out, and you couldn't really get around it very good. And all I wanted to do was just
Yeah,
rock his groin, but I
yeah.
couldn't.
It's just like
So it was so
let's
frustrating.
crush
Or
some
sweep,
cookies.
or sweep right, or sweep that base leg. But that stuff was off limits, so it's kind of frustrating to be limited in what we could do.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit more like to your modality. So of teaching. So you came from sweat, blood, and concrete. And then as you started teaching, did you find throughout the past 40 years where you've had to take different approaches on teaching or expectations or even and how you promote people and whatnot? Because not everybody's a fighter, right?
Sure, sure. And people join martial arts for different reasons. Like you said, none of not all of them want to, get out there and you know, punch and kick, but we do. Even if they're not into that part of it, it's still part of it. They don't have to excel in it or make it their thing, but it is part of our training. So yeah, hardcore training back in the day, you really had to be motivated, and uh, there wasn't, the popularity wasn't there. People didn't have the self-discipline or the mindset to really stick with something long term and endure that training in order to reap the benefits. So uh, we've come up over the years of training. We're still, teach the same core curriculum. It is our mission to make sure that our quality stays where it needs to be. But we've come up with training methods, whether it be partner drills, pad drills, solo drills, um, all the different equipment. The wave, they didn't have wave masters back in the day. I mean, all these different things that we use nowadays, we can bring out. I mean, I've got probably 25 wave masters, and every class, we're bringing them out on the floor and we're working combinations and stuff like that. So we've changed up the methodology a little bit so that it breaks it down. I mean, back in the day, it was basically the instructor got up there and did something, and he said, "Okay, now y'all do it." Well, we didn't really understand the principles and um, all the ins and outs. We were just copying somebody else. So one of the things about our system that I really like is it's principle based. There are principles when it comes to energy and movement and power and things like that that apply across the board. And if your technique lies within those principles, then you've got something good. If it violates those principles, then you have to take a look at it and say, is this going to work or is it not? And you have to discard the things that are no longer useful. But we've come up with methods that we feel like takes the average person, which may or may not be talented or skilled naturally, to be able to still progress in a way and learn good technique and get the rank and benefit from the art.
Yeah, I think you said something that's truly it's the core, the foundation of it is think martial arts and the purpose for martial arts has changed over the decades. They used to literally need to do it for survival, to fight, self-defense, things of that nature. And at certain periods in our history, they just did it to stir crap. At
Yeah.
certain times, like different times in at least American history, right? Um, But the nugget of wisdom there is everyone does it for different reasons. And if you can, like you have done, structured your curriculum and teach it in such a way that they're every day they come in, they're better to that day than they were the day before. They've become a more polished version of themselves and improve themselves, which that's where the character, in my opinion, the character, the confidence, and the self discipline really come
Yes,
together and become one with the person.
sure. Yeah, I mean, there's so many people now that are benefiting from martial arts that probably wouldn't have considered it before if we were training old school. They just it wouldn't be
Oh
for
yeah,
them, let's say.
no,
But
absolutely. That's why we had small classes and we couldn't rent or get
yes,
into.
and when you have small classes, you can't, afford a lease and buildings and nice facilities and things like that. So in order to, be able to do what you love to do and pass on and teach what you love to do, um, there's got to be there's got to be the income in order to support a business. So a lot of people used to always say, well, no, you're selling out if you're teaching kids classes or if you're doing this or doing that. But uh, you can still have a good system and a good program and good results under modern day training methods, let's say.
I agree. I agree. And you've lived through, you've survived for 40 years through the popularity, the lulls, the movies that came out when the fad went away, COVID. COVID killed so many organizations and schools and
Yeah.
motivations of individuals who would normally may be interested. So, how, just for a brief moment, how did you survive COVID?
Yeah. So that wasn't easy. Luckily, our memberships are contracts. So everybody, when COVID hit, was still under contract, which was a big relief for me because I was still having to pay pay my lease and everything regardless. So that kept the money coming in, but we did lose. We probably lost 50% of our student body, and it took us a couple of years to after COVID to build that back up. And we were actually doing Zoom classes, which were that was the worst.
Okay, so you got to expand on that a little bit for me because I've seen people do it, especially during COVID. I did some when I was teaching Southern Chinese boxing in Georgia when I had a school there before I got relocated to Tennessee, and that I found Zoom classes, if you will, for lack not copyrighted, but uh, that's tough.
Yeah. So basically, we set up a tripod and a camera, and I'd have an assistant there for doing self-defense or partner drills just to kind of demonstrate. But basically, you're just talking to a camera, and we did our classes live, and then I would email the link to the recording for those that missed the live. Well, in the kids' classes, we might have had 5 or 6 kids out of 40 that would be live on the Zoom training, and then some would pick it up later and
Mhm.
watch the recording. But with the adult program, it might have been one or two, or sometimes zero, and I would still have to get out there in front of the camera and teach the class just like I would if the room was full of people. So it's
That's
just
got to be
strange.
tough, maybe emotionally, mentally. I don't know, but I mean, you got to be
Yeah,
disciplined to continue the quality and the enthusiasm
yeah.
for the
Well, we were
audience
in
of
it, and
one.
we didn't want to stop what we were doing, and that was the only really alternative that the industry was providing for a way to stay in touch with your students and keep them engaged, I guess you could say.
That's good. Um, so, is there anything before we move on to any other subject? Is there anything you want to share about the history of the style? You don't have to go into too much depth. I know you had to do essays on it. uh,
Sure. So,
and
my instructors,
forgive me for asking. Or have you been promoted to grandmaster or just at a
I
master
have,
level? Okay, I
yes,
was
and
not
my
sure. I didn't
instructor,
want to mistitle you.
no, I'm an heir and grandmaster. So my instructor passed about, gosh, I hate to
Yeah,
say, I don't remember, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 now.
it's been at least.
But
Yeah.
shortly, maybe a year or two before he passed, he came up with Bob Metier, and tested me and promoted me. Now I had gone through what we call a Pai Shi tea ceremony, which was what you were talking about, with kind of the transfer of the system. I did that back when I was a third degree black belt or black sash, which um, I guess my instructor at that time was already, kind of planning ahead and looking to see who he had that he wanted to invest his time and energy in. Um, so that part of it wasn't new. I've been in air for some time, but that final promotion was basically saying, you know, I think it was myself and two other people that
Mm.
received grandmaster rank.
Oh, wow.
Nobody else is teaching, none of that group, none of those students that I came up with.
Yeah, I think I don't even know what happened to Roland Roach. Oh, Roach. Do you remember him?
I
Roland
do, and I
Roland
trained with
Jarvis.
Roland. Yeah, Roland Jarvis. So
He was
last time I
fast.
saw him was at my instructor's funeral, and I don't know that he was still training, but he was a solid martial artist too.
Oh yeah. I
And
remember
and
when
he,
I first met him. He was rocking some 3 section staff, and I was like, whoa.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We do lots of weapons training. That's one of the things I really enjoy too.
Yeah, and you don't see that too often anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of the hard styles, a lot of the karate styles, it's just basically staff nunchucks. Maybe you'll get a sword form or something.
Or a
But
sigh or something.
yeah, right, tonfa occasionally, but very limited compared to what we do. I mean, weapons is a big deal for us.
So let me ask you this: what is it that you think, from your perspective, opinion, and experience, makes a good martial arts instructor? Like, what does that person need to have as a foundation to be good and develop people like you've done for 40 years?
Well, I guess if you're looking at it from a position of what it takes to be a good instructor, meaning with the students, or what it takes to be a good instructor personally. Um, Personally, I would say a lifelong passion. Um, I think there's still so many people out there that do something like we do, and they do it for a hobby or for fun. And for us, it's a lifestyle. It's something that has become an important part of our lives that will always be. So I don't ever foresee myself not doing this until I'm physically not able. And then even then, I'm still going to be out there watching
Yeah,
and
you'll be
teaching.
watching and correcting people
That's right.
with the finger, the one good finger.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the time. I remember when my instructor would come up and sit in on our board for my school's tests, and he just got to sit and enjoy watching Kung Fu, and he really got pleasure out of watching so many people learn what we have been taught and finding joy and passion in doing it. So I'm looking forward to that point. And I love a belt test where I'm not doing a bunch of writing about, things, errors that they made. If I can sit there and watch a test and just enjoy the performance, that's just awesome to me. And that's something
Yeah,
I'll never
no, I
get
can see that.
tired of.
So here's a question. Since you brought up testing, do you make them do a history lesson too? Essay?
I do not. And I keep thinking about it because most of my students, they get our history in a packet, one of the levels that they get when they're beginners. But they don't know our history very, very well. And
So you
I'm
don't even do
afraid
it
of it.
for black sash or anything?
I don't.
Okay,
And I
I'm
should.
just curious.
Yeah.
I I think it would
Especially for
deter
black
people,
sash, I should be
honestly.
doing it. Yeah. So I need to bring that back. Um, it's gonna it's gonna ruffle some feathers, but what the heck?
Well, you know what? Here's a suggestion. Not that it's any of my business.
Sure.
If you don't start doing it for your blacks, you can do it for the. I don't know every system's a little different where they break out in degrees or twans, uh, third degree or fourth degree. What's a master? What's not? But somewhere in those ranks, if someone's sticking with it, that I think it'd be an easier cookie to eat.
Yeah. They should not really be an instructor if they don't know their history.
Yeah.
That should be part of it. Thank you for the reminder.
I'm not trying to tell you what to do,
I know, see. No, but
but I'm of the
that
same
pops into my
mindset.
head every once in a while. That does pass through my thinking, and
Yeah,
I
well,
just
I'm
have
the
to
same
hold
way
back to
because
it.
I believe if you're going to attain a black, because I've met, going back in our conversation, like Grandmaster Norman said, so many people don't know even know what country their martial art came from or who their teacher's teacher was even, and
Yeah,
in a sense it
most.
doesn't matter, but and it depends on the lens. To some things it does matter because it enriches what you're learning, in my
Sure.
opinion. But that's if you're a history guy like me.
Yeah.
So we're not going to. I don't want to pick your brain for all your nuggets of wisdom and secret sauce recipes. But in terms of running a martial arts school, marketing, insurance stuff, things to consider, because I know you've learned, I'm sure, a ton of valuable lessons that some of us have not been either fortunate or unfortunate enough to learn. Right? Um, if someone wanted to open a school in today's day and time, because rec centers aren't always a thing anymore, where you could go kind of get some time in. Like I believe that's how you started in Ridgeland a little bit.
I did. And I would actually recommend starting small because a big overhead and no students is stress.
Yes. So what would be, however many points of of advice would you want to give to somebody? Because one of the the International Chinese Boxing Association, the ICBA, they have a lot of wisdom within the board and within the membership, and can impart a lot of valuable lessons or guidance and mentorship. I truly believe you're one of the key people who could do that, because you're actively teaching. You've got a 40-year successful run of history. You've got a solid martial arts style that has generations of history and experience behind it. So, what would if there are like five or however many you think there are, because you're smarter at it than I am. Uh, if someone said, "I want to open a martial arts school," what would be your recommendations of things they should consider and do first, starting out?
Yeah, so getting the word out is one of the most important things, regardless of where you are. If people know you're there and you can create some interest, then you'll have students. Back in the day, it was Yellow Pages, which it was expensive, and you don't ever know, what your return on investment is with Yellow Pages ads. And then you do door flyers. You'd go walk the neighborhoods and drop flyers off. Occasionally, you could get into the schools and pass out flyers. Now, what we do in our area, Jackson, Mississippi is not that big of a town, but it's got a lot of suburbs that um, have their own um, festivals, family festivals, fall festivals, Christmas events, Halloween events, things like that. And we try to be everywhere and anywhere that we can. So we'll call up, somebody who's doing an outdoor concert, and they'll advertise kids area where they have, you know, jump houses and stuff like that. Well, we'll set up a pop-up tent and a table, and we'll pass out helium balloons or punch balloons or something to get people coming up. And then while we're blowing up the balloons or talking to the people, or while we're busy with them, we can talk to them about classes, give them a card. And we offer, like I said, a free trial, so they can sign up right there for the free trial, and then we contact them and bring them in. But I think public exposure is really, really good as far as marketing goes. If you can get in with the schools, a lot of times you have to be a school sponsor depending on the area, and so you've got to pay to be able to get in and advertise to the kids. We do Christmas parades where all of our students walk in the parades, and the kids love it. And then they get to pass out cards to everybody along the way about our program and our classes. So it's a never ending deal. But now a lot of stuff's going through Facebook. I mean, Facebook marketing is the thing that everybody's using, and I'll have to say that the leads are not always that high of quality. It's a numbers thing. You go through 50 leads and you get, a dozen students. So it's hit or miss there. especially if you offer something free. A lot of people don't have any intentions of investing any money in a program. They just looking for something free for their kids to do. So they say, sure, we'll take you up on that. And that's fine too. At least they have exposure. It gets them to also, they may not have had intentions of doing something, but if they really like something and their kids are benefiting, then they'll figure out a way to, come up with that monthly fee to keep their kids in class, because they know if they're not in that, they're going to be out doing something else, whether it be hanging out on the corner with the neighborhood kids, or,
Yeah.
something else that they'll be getting into. So uh, that's
What
what
are
we
your
do.
thoughts
That's just
on,
the more.
you
Go
know,
ahead.
like back in I know the 80s, 90s, probably 70s, demonstrations were really big.
Yes, yes. Okay, yes.
So when you mention like outside festivals and stuff, does your school still participate, or I know it's probably selective, but do you still conduct demos, or what are your thoughts on those
We
nowadays?
do now, but it's just so rare. And most of the events that we do are like an all day deal. So I've got to have people out there with me to be able to do a demonstration with. Um, and that used to be the way we would get in. We'd say, hey, we want to do a martial arts demonstration for your group, whatever that deal is. Um, Nowadays, we do some demos at the schools, and we do some self-defense seminars. So that's something that we do that's kind of taken the place of demos. We used to do Jackson years ago, maybe 15 years ago. They had a semi-pro hockey team at Coliseum, into an ice hockey rink. And we would go down at halftime on the ice, and they would lay out a big rug for us, and we would put on a demo at
Really?
half of the hockey game. Yeah, there might be 5 or 10,000 people in there watching, and it was cool. We'd have we'd started off by having one person on each of the four sides of the Coliseum of the rink, working on different weapon forms. One guy would be working double broadswords, one person would be working chain whip, one person would be working Quan Dao. And so that was all going on at the same time. And then we would do, kicking and self defense and just a whole bunch of stuff. But
Low Shou
yeah,
Pai on
we got to
ice.
the point where we do get calls, people wanting us to come out and either do a self-defense seminar, or do a demo for their organization. So still enjoy doing them,
So the
but it is a
summer,
lot. It's
yeah.
a
So
lot of work.
summary, your advice would be start small. You know, find a small space. Don't try to start where you want to end up.
Yeah, because you'll be in for a struggle. I mean, this, Steve. You've seen so many schools that have not lasted, and a lot of them think like the Field of Dreams, build it and they will come, and that's not the case. And it's not the case of just about any business. It's not
No,
just
that's
martial
true.
arts. I mean, you open a restaurant and nobody knows, who you are, what you do. You just got to sign up. It's going to be a struggle. So you got to constantly be out there in front of people.
No, absolutely. So start small, build up
Yeah.
as you go
So when
forward.
I started
What, what about
here in
insurance?
Mississippi, pardon me.
What do you think about? I mean, of course, insurance nowadays in today's day and
Oh,
time, legal. What would you
yeah.
advise
So
on that?
I've never had any issues, but I do have insurance. And gosh, I'm trying to even think who I use now. It, I can't even remember just off the top of my head. But I do have liability insurance, and I think it's a must. I think you're foolish if you don't. Um, Nowadays, you just don't know. You can have a student that you think is a good student, and something happens, and or if it's a minor, their parents,
Mhm.
could just ruin you.
Yeah,
So,
and that's your safety net because whether you're LLC'd or not, everything funnels back to the individual because it could be a personal civil suit. So that's
yes,
something that's likely the route they're going to take is because you're the professional. So
sure.
I would wholeheartedly agree, and that's something we may do a future episode on if you're willing, and uh, is just on for mostly for the ICBA membership people would
Like
be
business
an online
structure.
video, yeah, a bit like business school for martial arts type of thing. Something to think about. I don't know if
Yeah.
you want that. I don't know if you want to do that. It's an idea. I'm the good idea fairy. I come up with
Yeah,
all kinds of.
I do too, Steve. I'm the idea guy too. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be the guy, but I would contribute what I know. I'd be happy to do that.
All
Yeah.
right.
So what I did when I started, you were talking about start small. When I started the YMCA, it wasn't even me renting space from them. It was us splitting the monthly fees. And it was like 50-50. And at that time, when I first started, um, I might have had a dozen students at the Y, but you have no overhead and you don't have any base that you have to meet in order to break even. If you have one student, you're in business because you're making money and the Y is making money. You're not having to, pay a rent or lease or anything like that. So I would always start small. You can always grow. And while you're small, always keep your eyes open for other locations and facilities and, what are good areas, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But
So
there's people out there that have small schools that might have 500 students, and it's just because they're open all the time and they have classes around the clock. They have morning classes, they have night classes, they have
I have
active
been
lunchtime
noticing a lot of
classes.
that lately, especially with the since COVID, the work from home opportunities that are out there. I've seen a lot of
Right.
lunchtime and early mornings, and
Yeah, we have never done that here. Because I actually that has not come up in the conversation yet, but I do work full time and do
yeah,
this in the evenings. So I don't. I've got some instructors under me that could do morning classes and afternoon. Another thing that we talked about and have discussed is approaching homeschool groups because they kind of
yeah,
clan together, and if you hit it off with them, it could be a really good thing. And you're using your school in hours at times when you wouldn't typically be using it, and so you're not interfering with your normal classes. So that's another
yeah.
opportunity out there.
So here another question I have, and this is not necessarily a shameless plug because this is the ICBA channel, but do you see benefit in joining martial arts organizations, whether you're a solo practitioner or you're a student or you're an independent school or you're part of some other martial family, perhaps? I mean, do you see any benefit to to organizational fraternity type stuff?
I do, but I think it's really individualized depending on what their goals are. If a person is considers themselves a martial artist and is in this long term, I think it's a wonderful idea because it lets you network like we're doing now with other systems and other styles. It's particularly Chinese martial arts. That's something that's fairly unique and important, but you also will have access to other resources, not only in this type of stuff that we're talking about school management and things like that, but uh, you have skilled masters and grandmasters from around the world that are going to be contributing information, techniques, training that you wouldn't be able to get in any other way. And so, also, if you are planning on doing this full time, having associations or affiliations with different groups gives you credibility in what you do. If somebody's just a loner out there, has got no background, the average person off the street may not look deep enough to consider things like that, but somebody who knows what goes on out there with people just, you know, opening up a school and starting teaching somewhere and has no background or lineage or history, I think that's something you'd stay away from.
Yeah, I would agree. No, absolutely, absolutely, I would agree. So, what are your thoughts on another aspect of organization? Because you said networking and learning, exchange of techniques, if you will, or learning other concepts and methodologies of martial arts. What is your idea? What is your personal opinions on cross training, and at what level does that make sense for somebody?
Steve, I totally discourage it. And if I know ahead of time that somebody comes in and they're taking jujitsu or they're taking something else, I tell them, go do what you're doing or stop what you're doing and come see me. I think uh, it would just be difficult for anybody, even somebody who's an experienced martial artist, because I've had students come in and you've seen it too. They come in from other systems and they carry that with them, and then it interferes with what you're trying to do. And they'll even stick to what they know as opposed to what you're teaching just because that's what they know better or that's what they're more accustomed to. So I discourage it and I will tell people, I mean, I don't really, because I don't do this for a living, I don't have to, I don't accept just anybody that comes in the door. We're a little bit
Mhm.
more particular and like to get to know somebody. And that's one of the reasons why we do the free trial too. We don't want somebody just coming in off the street and signing up and we don't know who they are. So
Yeah.
we get to see how they interact with the other students, get to see their character and that kind of thing. But in regards to what you said, I would, I would tell them no and just say, come back and see me when you get through with what you're doing.
No, I can see benefits to both sides myself. It depends on the person, right? Because some people can empty their cup, some people cannot. Most people cannot, and even the ones that can, they're regimented already by another discipline.
Yes.
Unless it's
That's
unless
one of
it's
the
like a
hardest
sister
things.
style or something, it's very difficult.
Yeah. You get hard style coming into Kung Fu, they've got to break that and get used to being relaxed and being fluid and
Yeah.
being
To get them on tracks like
smooth.
turning a shrimp boat takes a long time. Let's go around.
Yes, yes. So if you're doing Kung Fu and you're doing Jiu-Jitsu, those are contradictory, in my opinion. If you're doing Wing Chun and Shou Pai or something Chinese related. There's so many similarities there that I think those could actually uh, benefit each other and wouldn't be so much of an issue. So if I had a guy that was doing Tai Chi on the side and coming in with us and training, I'd say no issue there.
Yeah.
But if you're taking two completely different disciplines, then I think
No,
there's a conflict.
that's a very distinct and valid observation that you made, because, and this is me throwing out my experience and thought of it, but American Kempo and Shou Pai, for example, possibly that could work. Wing
When you
Chun,
say an American Kempo, you're talking about like Ed Parker's.
yeah, Ed Parker stuff because it's more Chinese flavored.
Yes, yes,
Um, not Japanese Kempo.
right.
Uh, Wing Chun, Chole Foot, Hung Gar, any Southern style really, and a large majority of Northern styles, perhaps. So I would totally agree with that. But if you're coming from jujitsu or judo actually I think judo would probably fit with most things to a degree.
Aikido,
Definitely, Aikido.
another similar.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna lay on your experience and your decades of tenure, and say, how do you see the martial arts fitting in today's day and time, the new generations? Because you're seeing the cross spectrum of generations. You've got X's, Generation Z, millennials, and you've got whatever they are now. I don't even know what they are.
I don't even keep up with all that. So
A6
I hear those
squared. I
terms.
have no idea. I don't even
Yeah,
understand the labels half the time. I just know I'm X because I remember Racer X and Speed Racer back in the day, and I liked him, and that's how it
there
sticks
you
with
go.
me.
Yeah, yeah, you just revealed your age there, Steve. Speed racer.
I know I'm dusty,
Yep,
but
yep.
how do you
So
see the benefits of child, young adult, teenage, grown adult, old,
yeah,
senior adult?
I always tell people that there's a lot of things out there you could do for self-defense. There's a lot of things you could do out there for fitness and health. But I don't know of any activity out there, not going to the gym, not running, not riding a bike, not doing, so many things that people do. There's nothing out there, in my opinion, that will benefit somebody holistically the way that a good quality martial arts training program will. And when you're talking about the stress relief, the mental aspects, the self-defense aspects, the fitness aspects, as you get older, um, you get stiffer, you lose some of your equilibrium. Uh, to me, even though I'm getting up in the age a little bit, I still love training hard. And the sore I am the next day, the better I feel. So that's what keeps me young and keeps me going. I mean, I'm just turned 62 a few months ago, and still enjoy training just as much as I did when I was young.
And
can't
that's a
quite
good point
do
you brought up
everything I
too.
could do
You're
before.
not an armchair seafood. You're not standing in the background just pointing and having other people correct. You're still engaged.
I am, yeah. And for a long, long time, uh, when I was coming up through the ranks and even as an instructor, I trained every class, every repetition with the class. And as I got older and kind of my viewpoint shifted a little bit, and now it's all about investing in students and giving back. So I spend more time now than I did before, you know, motivating, nurturing, teaching, sharing, explaining. So I do some repetitions and then I critique and teach. So that for me, that's how my teaching has changed. But as far as how I think the future of martial arts is looking, I think if people really knew what it was about, I think more people would be flocking to martial arts school because I don't know if there's any equal out there for an activity.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly with you. I think that was very well said. So I know at one point you were doing distance education training with a video series back in the VHS days, right? Or CDs or something.
Yeah, so I did. I put together a home training course because I would have people when the internet got going, you hear people that track you down and saying, do you have a school in Washington State or and we're a family system, so we're a very tight knit group with Shou Pai. For those who are unfamiliar, a family system of martial arts. So I think I've explained earlier that our system originated from the five animal system, which was the leopard, snake, crane, tiger, and dragon. It was called Tung Wu Chuan Fa, which was a five animal fist way. Nung Ti Li, who was the originator of Shou Pai, he was a master of the five animal system, and he created Dragon Claw Kung Fu. And so Dragon Claw Kung Fu was kind of, closely held, which a lot of Chinese systems were. And it was actually only taught to the male members of the family because the girls of the family would marry outside of the family and thus carry the family's Kung Fu secrets outside, supposedly. So, uh, yeah, so uh, I forgot where the original
No,
question
that's
was,
okay.
but
That's okay. Let's see. I was so involved in listening. I was so oh yeah, the distance education
yes, okay,
courses
yes.
with the
Yeah,
videos, and I
so
was
I
also,
set up.
also curious if it was still a viable program that's out there.
I don't even know if the website is still up. I do still have all the originals, and I do still get contacted occasionally, and I'll sell one of the courses. But the basic foundation course that I put together was like 7 DVDs, and it covered the warm up and blocking, striking, kicking, solo drills, partner drills, forms, uh, just just our whole basic level, the foundation of our system is in as part of that. So it is still available. People can contact me and I can and fill them in on what that's all about. It's really inexpensive because nowadays, stuff is so easy to duplicate and put out. So I don't know if even people are doing DVDs anymore, but that's what I was doing. It was DVDs. I wasn't doing online streaming type
Yeah, it was
of
that mail like the
activity.
old Panther Productions video series type stuff.
Yes, yeah,
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 I know
yeah.
I'm old.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
So yeah, I was one of those martial art magazine junkies when I was a kid, because that's how I first
Sure.
started learning was
Yeah. Inside
from
Kung
magazines.
Fu,
Because we were
right?
too poor, we didn't have the money to send me to a school. My family didn't, so it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But that's another story. So,
Yeah. Inside
so
Kung Fu was the magazine.
oh, that was the best one. But there was also
Was.
Ninja and Inside Karate, and yeah.
That's right.
So let me ask you. So some people that are like, okay, that maybe have watched this and say, okay, my interest is perked a little for my kid, my teenager, especially nowadays. Teenagers are so reclusive in a sense. Maybe I'm a little out of date, but I would say
No, I think you're right.
compared to 10 years ago, extremely reclusive. Not by their own doing, but living through the COVID, living through video games and online social media, uh, the online platforms which distract you from personal interaction and things of that nature. What would you say to parents or individuals who are watching this who say, I might be interested in this? What would be the benefit to them to break out of that shell and just walk through the door, have that conversation?
Sure. So I think kids nowadays really are hypnotized by electronics, and we see it all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many parents you see handing a tablet or a phone to their kids just so they can go do their own thing. And kids get very short attention spans because everything's always changing when you're looking at videos or pictures or, you know, uh, surfing the net, you're constantly your mind's jumping all over the place, and they really lack focus, and that's showing up, I think, in all of the cases that you see of ADD and ADHD and kids having focus problems. And I think it should be a concern of parents because it's going to affect their child's learning ability. It's going to affect their grades in school. It's going to affect how they eventually perform a job if they can't stay attentive and focused. So I would strongly encourage parents to get their kids out of the house doing something. I mean, back in the day, you couldn't keep us in the house.
Yeah,
We as soon as we got home from school, we threw our books down and we got on our bikes or
yeah.
something, and we
Go
were
build
done for
forts,
that.
go throw sticks at each other, whatever it was.
Right.
Go
Dirt
hunt each other
clods.
in the woods.
That's right. That's right.
So
So,
what do you so with that laid out, what benefits would a course of instruction in martial arts, specifically Long Shou Pai, what does that bring to that family, to that child, to that individual?
sure. So you're getting the social interaction with other kids their age. They're doing physical fitness, which is increasing, like I said, their balance, their coordination, their strength, their flexibility, so many different physical benefits, but it also trains their mind. It trains their mind to focus because in order to follow along with a live instructor, a live class, they have got to stay attentive. So, and it's easy for an instructor who's experienced to be able to see kids that might be daydreaming or drifting in class, and you can, you know, give them a nudge and get their attention back.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think long term, it's teaching them a lot of things. It's teaching them goal setting. It's teaching them perseverance. It's teaching them not to quit when things get tough or they get bored, to finish what they start. Um, and all of these are life skills that will benefit them literally for the rest of their lives. So, and I'm not just saying that about my program. I think any good martial arts program, wherever you are, if you get connected, I think that it's kind of like being in the military. There's a camaraderie there. There's a discipline there. There's a respect there. There's order. Um, so many things that kids are going to experience in their adult life, um, they will be familiar with and have a handle on while they're still young, and it will just do nothing but benefit them throughout their life, whether it be relationships or career.
Well put. So we're going to go to the next to our last little inquiry section, right? Uh, we've been on for about an hour, and I don't want to be mindful of your time because it's not like you're eating bonbons right now. You got a school in the background to run. so,
Yeah, we're good.
uh, so how do you see looking forward for Long Shu Pai, your school, or martial arts in general, or all of it? What legacy do you see looking forward that you want to leave behind, and or how martial arts can be a part of that for other people and other systems, even whichever way you want to look at it.
So as I'm getting older, I'm starting to look at the next generation and have been for some time, actually. I mean, you're always, if you're in it for a long time, want to see what you're doing um, continued. So, one of my top priorities is quality. We don't want to water down the system. We want to make sure that we keep the bar high. When we have tests, we don't pass every student, and our students know that, and they don't want to be that one that doesn't pass their test in front of the whole whole school essentially. So I really impress upon my instructors under me to uh, don't settle for uh, under par performances or technique, that we need to keep that bar high. And then the other thing is just to have a legacy, meaning you've got to have somebody or some persons to carry on. And so that is part of what I do now, is I'm just kind of nurturing, I guess you'd say, my instructors to uh, take over. There's a lot of responsibilities within the school that I used to do completely, fully, all on my own, that I'm starting to delegate. And I'm not even really involved in the test preparation, which for a decent sized school, there's a lot involved in making sure who's ready, what rank they're testing for, not screwing that up, because the parents are coming out for the test, and you need to make sure that you have the right belt and certificate for the child. Um,
Name spelled right.
but I've got right, yeah, that happens too. Um, but now I have instructors that I just basically show up for the test. Now I kind of oversee and make sure they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, but I'm passing a lot of that on, and a lot of administrative stuff. My daughter she has the title here of a program director. She does a lot of the administrative stuff, a lot of the student relations, things like that, and I'm kind of an old. I'm not going to say grumpy guy, but I, I'm not as good cajoling parents and stuff as my daughter is. So I'm usually pretty blunt and pretty straightforward with people, and I think I could use more tact time at times when I'm dealing with folks, because I tend to be kind of like, well, it's this way or the highway, and not being very accommodating sometimes. But that's just because the way I was trained and the way I was brought up.
Yeah, well, that's
It's
why we have daughters, to soften us, make us
That's right.
listen, right? Because
That's right.
I know that life, and it's a wonderful life. I would not trade for nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
So, uh, as we wrap up, first, before I ask you the last question, thank you so much. It's been great to see you and talk to you again. It's been a long time since
Likewise.
uh, I respect the heck out of you. I always have. I always thought you were a wonderful person and great instructor. And I know your Kung Fu family well, because I grew up in the same area. And Grandmaster Norman was always good to me. So he tried
Good
to
guy.
recruit me a couple of times. But I wish
He
now,
did.
looking back, I would have done that. But I was always like, but I'm a student here.
That's right.
but but no, I want to extend, on behalf of the International Chinese Box Association and myself, thank you so much for taking time out to do this.
My
And
pleasure.
more importantly, because you are the guest of honor, right? Um, if people have interest in Shou Pai, Kung Fu, Jackson, Mississippi, or in distance, or however it is whatever it is that you offer in your menu of instruction, how can people get in touch with you? What words would you like to impart?
Sure.
And
So I was fortunate enough to get in early on domains on the internet, and so our website is academyofkungfu.com. So that's where the information on our classes are, schedule, tuition, staff pictures, the history of our style, a lot of good information there. Actually, we're just now changing over to a Squarespace website, which is a little bit more condensed. It doesn't have yet. The site hasn't been built out yet, and I'm not even sure that we have made that transition, but I know it's happening any day now. But it'll still be academyofkungfu.com.
okay,
You can reach me there by phone or email
all right. What's
and
your
come see us.
physical address location of your school?
Sure. 150 Sunnycrest Drive, Ridgeland, 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 Mississippi.
Not Richland, Ridgeland.
Ridgeland, right.
Okay.
We do have a Richland,
Yeah,
which is South Jackson, and
yeah,
we're on the north side of Jackson.
yeah. I found it when I used to say that, people thought I was talking about the other one. Uh,
Yeah.
and then also too, telephone number of the school?
Sure. 601-856-5051.
And any email
601 eight
inquiry?
five six 5051.
All right. And a school email? Got to give it all, man.
Yeah, so it'll be Sifu Crake, SIFUCRAKE at gmail.com. Be the easiest way to reach me personally.
Well, Grandmaster Trey
There you
Crake,
go.
I greatly appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who's watching this now. Any of you who have interest in joining the International Chinese Boxing Association, an organization that's been around for 50 years, whether you've heard of it or not, has membership all over the world, and is the chairman of the organization is Dr. David M. Grego, a man who has over 50 years in the martial arts, including in teaching, and a vast amount of experience across the board, which Grandmaster Crake is on that board of directors and has contributed a great deal already. There's a lot of benefits to being a member of the International Chinese Boxing Association, ICBA. It's easier for me to say it. But if you have interest in that, it's ICBA-WW for worldwide. Just ask Google, and Google will point you the way. So
Yep.
Google is amazing. So thank you for showing up, Grandmaster Crake. Thank you very much as well. And I'll see y'all later.
See ya.